sensitivity of all this, I am told by a senior U.S. official that the administration is getting information that it believes is reliable, and from ranking members of the Mubarak regime, that indeed a plan is in place for the president to step aside and yield power to his vice president. Now, I want to add a healthy dose of skepticism. The administration is saying, as this official put it to me, quote, "We need to see it happen." Yet they do believe, Suzanne, that the pressure has built and that the military has sent the president a message. And again, they say they are being told by people they trust in the Mubarak regime that this plan is indeed in place for the president to step aside, yield power to the vice president. And the administration says, number one, it needs to see it happen. It has had mixed and conflicting signals throughout this crisis. And number two, it says it's seeking what the source called clarifying information about the timetable and the mechanics of all this. Because as you know, and as you've been discussing with Ben and others, there have been some questions about constitutional questions, legal questions. You know, can the vice president take power? And if so, what has to be done to enact the democratic and other political reforms that the protesters have been demanding? But the biggest headline is the administration, Suzanne, from this source tells me, does have information from people they trust in the regime that this plan indeed is in place for President Mubarak to step aside and yield power. And again, I'll say it one more time, they do have a bit of skepticism. They want to see it, but they're beginning to believe it.
And, John, I want to press that point a little bit because obviously we've seen events unfold in the White House over the last couple of weeks in the course of this conflict. And on the one hand, you had President Obama urging President Mubarak to do this quickly, to resolve this matter, and praising the military for the lack of violence on the street. Then you had 24 hours later the statement from Mubarak coming out saying that he was going to wait until September. You had the Obama administration playing catch-up, doing a switch-around, if you will, and essentially had to back Plan B, which was to have the vice president there and have Mubarak give him a little bit more time. Why do they think this might be any different? Why do we suppose that they feel this sense of trust now that this could be the moment that this happens?
Well, this is the first time they would say that they're getting specific information that the president has agreed to step aside. Early on, they were, when the vice president was appointed, and as everyone has discussed, the vice president has been someone the United States has dealt with for way previous to this administration, somebody they trust, somebody they have faith in. They believed the process had begun. And you're right, it was a little more than a week ago when the president said he wanted an orderly transition and he wanted it to begin now. It has been a messy process. There's no doubt about that. The administration would say that it never said President Mubarak had to go tomorrow, but it did want him to announce his intentions to leave and put in place a transition plan. And the administration will have to answer for how some of the public statements don't exactly match up to how they evolved over several days. But their main point has been he needs to step aside, he needs to make an announcement to the Egyptian people, and he needs to set in place a plan to have a transitional government and then a process that allows political parties to register and grow, that sets a clear date for the elections, that makes clear that the emergency martial laws will be lifted and that freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of demonstration, some sort of a campaign atmosphere, if you will be allowed to exist in Egypt. The administration will go back and dissect this for many, many months. The main thing they want is for President Mubarak to step aside and to make a public announcement of that he is stepping aside. And again, they believe on this day, Suzanne, after what has been, you put it just right, a messy couple of weeks, they believe on this day the information they are getting is that that crowd will get its demands answered pretty soon.
John King, Jim Clancy, we're going to listen to the crowd here for a second as we hear their enthusiasm. We're really coming to a peak here with anticipation. John King, Jim again. You know, the U.S., the White House, has finally made a decision that they're asking Mr. Mubarak to step aside. It has come at an agonizing pace. It has made the White House appear as if it was very indecisive on this one. And it comes, moreover, above the voices of allies like Saudi Arabia and Israel that were advising and have been advising up until the last few hours the U.S. to stay the course with Mubarak, to stay the course for stability and respect for a longtime ally.
And, Jim, on the last point, the administration would say staying the course was simply an unsustainable position, that the genie is out of the bottle, and you're seeing it right there with those crowds gathering and growing by the day in Tahrir Square, even after the first attempt by the government to stifle the dissent and the protests with a crackdown. Look, it has been a messy process. The administration would argue it has not been as messy as we in the media have been making it, but as we dissect that, the administration, number one, has said pretty much from the beginning that President Mubarak was going to have to listen to these people and go. There's a big debate about whether by begin the transition immediately they meant he needed to go immediately. But there's no question, Jim, there is no question that from Saudi Arabia, from the United Arab Emirates, from Israel for that matter, there have been words of caution to this administration essentially saying, you don't know what you're unleashing here. You need to stand by Mubarak because if he falls, there will be uncertainty and unrest across the region. The administration's answer back is that this is not a U.S. decision to be made, that they did not tell Mr. Mubarak to go, or they cannot force him to go anyway, but they can tell him to look at those crowds, to listen to the military, and to realize he has lost the credibility of his own administration and that he cannot sustain his power in Egypt, and it is best for him to go. There will no doubt, you know the region very, very well, my friend, there will no doubt now be a domino effect and a lot of questions. What will happen in Yemen, what will happen in Jordan, what will happen in Iran for that matter, and how would any new government, if it is Vice President Suleiman in the short term, the Israelis will feel a little better in the short term. What will come next? What will come of the elections? How big of a factor will the Muslim Brotherhood be? Those are all giant question marks that will be answered in the weeks and months ahead. But the bottom line, when you talk to people high in the Obama administration, is that the crowds in Egypt, the dissent in Egypt is widespread. It is not limited to the Muslim Brotherhood. It is way across society, and that this was going to happen, and that their position is that they helped President Mubarak get the message. They didn't deliver the message.